All right, let's dive into something really fascinating today. We're going to explore a psychological model called prismatic cognition, which comes from the work of Denis Verhaeghe. It's really a framework for anyone who's ever felt like they're just too complex for a simple label. This quote right here, it's pretty powerful, and it gets right to the heart of what we're talking about. It paints this picture of a conflict, a tension that so many of us feel, a battle between our messy, creative, complex selves and the neat little boxes the world wants to squeeze us into.
And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? What happens when you take a personality test and the results just fall flat? You know, when it feels like a black and white snapshot of someone who lives in vibrant 3D color. What then?
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with that mythological conflict. Then I'll introduce you to the prismatic cognition model itself and its core pieces. After that, we'll get into the unique way of thinking that powers it all. And finally, we'll talk about how to deal with the outside world and keep growing within this kind of framework. Okay, first up, let's really unpack that central conflict. It's framed as this epic, mythological battle, a fight for the very soul of your identity. So, in this internal drama, we've got three key players. First, there's Apollo. That's the part of you that loves order, logic, and structure. Then you've got Dionysus. That's your creative, wild, chaotic side. And finally, there's Echo. And Echo, well, Echo is those frustratingly simple labels that other people stick on you, a pale, distorted reflection of who you really are. So, if your inner world is this constant battlefield, how do you navigate it? Well, this is where a new framework is proposed, prismatic cognition. And I want you to think of it less like a box and more like a lens that helps you see your own multidimensional self. Now, this is really important. Prismatic cognition isn't just another personality type. It's not a new label. It's a model that describes a dynamic process. It's about how seemingly opposite traits, like a deep need for structure and a love for creative chaos, can actually work together in perfect harmony. So how does this actually work under the hood? Let's break down the blueprint, at the very core of this model, which pulls together components from a few different frameworks. The model is a blend of three key elements. You've got C from the DISC model, which is conscientiousness, that desire for logic and precision. Then there's D, also from DISC, for dominance. That's your drive, your ambition for mastery. And then there's this really cool creative part, nicknamed BEEB, or baritone, which is all about flexibility, irony, and rhythm. It's this incredible mix of structured drive and creative freedom. And what fuels the growth in this model is this constant two-step rhythm. First, you have the Buddhist principle. You look inward, you reflect, and you learn to let go of old versions of yourself that no longer serve you. At the same time, you have the Da Vinci principle. You look outward with this intense curiosity, just observing everything to learn and innovate. It's a cycle. Okay, now we're getting into the really cool part, the cognitive architecture, the actual wiring of a prismatic mind. How does someone with this kind of blueprint actually process the world? This concept is pretty mind-bending. It's the exact opposite of multitasking. It's not about doing a bunch of things poorly at the same time. No, it's about having multiple, deeply focused streams of thought running at once, all interconnected. It's a lot like Dr. Amar Bo's audio concept of multi-mono, where multiple focused sound sources create one incredibly rich, holistic experience. Let's put these side by side because the difference is huge. Multitasking shatters your attention into a million little pieces, but multi-monotropic thinking layers your attention. Think of it like this. Instead of slicing a pie into tiny, separate pieces, you're adding layers to a cake, making the whole thing richer and more complete. And, this isn't just some abstract theory. It actually connects directly to some pretty serious neuroscience. It's linked to something called highly superior autobiographical memory, or HSAM. And this ability to hold on to deep, layered streams of thought is supported by things like grit cells for perseverance and place cells for spatial memory. It suggests a brain that's literally wired for deep experience and mastery. So, let's circle back. If you have this incredibly complex, layered internal world, how on earth do you deal with those simplistic echoes we talked about at the beginning? Those reductive labels the outside world keeps trying to slap on you? Okay, this is a really common point of confusion that can be damaging, so let's clear it up. We're talking about two completely different Ds. In the prismatic model, the D is for dominance from the DISC framework. It's all about drive, assertiveness, and mastery. That is a world away from the clinical Type D personality, which is a health risk profile all about distress and social inhibition, two totally different things.
So why does this mix-up happen? Well, basically, the mislabeling happens when the observer just doesn't have the cognitive tools to see the full picture. The source material calls this lacking I++1 abilities, basically the capacity to understand a system that's one level more complex than your own. So they default to what they can see, which is a simpler, more distressed image, the echo, instead of the complex reality.
So what can you do about it? Well, there's a fascinating strategy proposed here. It's called oxytocin-based leveling. Oxytocin is often called the bonding hormone, right? So the idea is to lean into empathy, to consciously build a social connection, to help lower the defensive walls that these kinds of misinterpretations can put up in other people. All right, let's pull all these different threads together now and look at the big picture. What is the ultimate takeaway from this prismatic cognition model?
And this really is the ultimate point. Prismatic cognition is not a static label. It's not another box to cram yourself into. It's a living, breathing blueprint for your own continuous, grounded journey of growth and self-mastery. So I'll leave you with this thought to chew on. Are you defined by the flat, simplistic echoes you run into out in the world? Or are you defined by the complex, dynamic, and evolving masterpiece that you are actively creating every single day?